Today, we're diving into one single idea, an idea that might just be the thing holding you back without you even realizing it. We're talking about the myth of readiness.
So let me just ask you, straight up, are you waiting? Waiting to feel ready. Ready to start that big project, or finally learn that new skill, or maybe make a huge career change. Are you waiting for that magic moment where, poof, all the fear vanishes and everything is suddenly crystal clear? And I'm willing to bet this feels familiar, right? You've watched all the tutorials, you've read the books, you've done everything you're supposed to do to get prepared. But you haven't actually started. You tell yourself you're just laying the groundwork, building a solid foundation. But if we're being honest, deep down, you're not waiting for more information. You're waiting for a feeling.
All right, so let's break this down. And I really want to be clear about something. This isn't some personal failing. It's not a flaw in your character. It's just a fundamental misunderstanding of how our brains are wired. And that's exactly what we're going to tackle first. In Section 1, the readiness fiction.
Okay, so let's give this thing a name, shall we? It's called the readiness fiction. And it's basically this false belief we all have that a feeling of confidence has to show up before we can even begin. You know the one. It's that little voice that says, just one more book, or just one more tutorial, then I'll finally feel ready.
But here's the hard truth, the one that sits right at the center of all this. That feeling, that perfect moment of readiness you're waiting for, it's never coming. It's a phantom destination. It just doesn't exist.
So you've got to be asking, why? Why does my brain do this to me? Well, here's the twist. This whole fiction isn't a bug, it's a feature. It's your brain's ancient, built-in protection system. It's trying to shield you from the potential pain and embarrassment of failing out in the open. The only problem is that helpful feature is the very thing keeping you completely stuck. Okay, so if endlessly preparing isn't the answer, then why does it feel so good? Why does it feel so productive? Well, that's exactly what we're going to get into in Section 2, Why Preparation Fails.
And this really gets to the heart of the problem. You see, on one side, you have passive exposure, watching videos, reading articles. That's what most of us think of as preparation. But on the other side, that's where the magic happens. That's active correction. That's actually doing the thing, messing it up, and then adjusting. Here's the key takeaway.
Your brain doesn't really learn just by looking at stuff. Real learning, the kind that actually rewires your brain, what scientists call neuroplasticity, it only gets triggered when you try to do something you can't quite do yet, when you fail, and then you figure out how to fix it. That failure, that correction, that's the trigger.
And all that time you spend passively studying, well, it creates something sneaky called the illusion of knowing. You get familiar with a topic, and your brain mistakes that familiarity for actual skill. But it's a house of cards. The second you're put under any real pressure to perform, the whole thing just collapses. All right, so we spend a lot of time on the problem. So what's the fix? What do we actually do about it? Well, that brings us to a really powerful framework in our next section, the Waitzkin method. Now, this method comes from a guy named Josh Waitzkin. You might know him. He was the inspiration for the movie Searching for Bobby Fischer. He was a chess prodigy, then became a world champion martial artist. This guy basically dedicated his entire life to figuring out what makes people truly great at things. And his biggest finding? The difference between being pretty good and being world-class. It isn't raw talent. It's having the right method. And his method? It's almost shockingly simple. There are just 2 steps. Step 1, you have to force yourself to produce something before you feel ready. I'm talking speak that broken sentence in the new language. Write that first ugly line of code. Just do the thing on day 1. Then, step 2, you isolate tiny, manageable pieces, he calls them chunks, of that skill, and you master them. So what exactly is a chunk? Think of it like this. It's about finding the 20% of the little sub-skills that give you 80% of the results. So instead of a guitarist fumbling through an entire song over and over, they should focus only on mastering the single chord change from G to C. Drill it until it's completely automatic. That's how you build a real foundation piece by piece. Okay, now we're getting to what is probably the most challenging, but also the most important part of this whole idea. In our next section, we're going to talk about why discomfort is the work. I want you to really hear this. Let it sink in for a second. The quote is, "The discomfort you've been avoiding isn't an obstacle to the work. The discomfort is the work." Think about that. That feeling of struggle, of being a little confused, of being just out of your depth. That's not a warning sign that you're failing.
That is the only signal you have that you are actually learning.
We have to get this straight. Effort and learning are two different things. You can put in a ton of effort rereading a chapter for hours and feel really busy, but that's not the same as productive struggle. That feeling of difficulty, that's the feedback. That's your brain telling you, hey, I'm building new connections up here. You don't just tolerate it. You have to actively seek it out.
So where do we go from here? How do we put all this into practice? Well, it all leads to our final section, your first output.
If you remember one thing from all of this, let it be this. True readiness, that feeling you've been chasing this whole time, it's not created by more input. It's forged by output. It's a consequence of doing, not a prerequisite for it. You've been waiting for permission to start, but the pen, it's been in your hand the whole time. So I'm going to leave you with one final question. And I don't mean some vague goal for next week or next month. I mean right now, today. What is the one small, specific, maybe even slightly uncomfortable thing that you are going to do today to finally get started?